to part 2 of Chelsi Shikongo Talks. My guests are Girley, Jazama and Sunet van Wyk, where we are continuing to talk about women in entertainment. Now, currently, there's a huge interest in the film industry, specifically in African talent. Why do you think that is? Why?
I think it's finally dawned on them because if you think of it, Africa is the cradle of humankind. And if you look at our history as a people, we have a lot of oral history, folklore, a lot of stories.
Yeah.
So I think that's why. And I think also because a lot of the time the focus was a lot more on Hollywood, on that side of the world. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But now I think it's also because of the fact that Nollywood and I don't know what they call the South African film industry.
Film production.
What are they? There's
Hollywood.
I don't know, maybe Sollywood, the South Africa.
It's got their own name, I don't know.
Yeah. So it's a population thing because I mean,
Okay.
also if you're looking at streaming platforms, what they look at, they create local content for local audience.
Okay.
So that's why Nigeria has done so well. That's why Kenya has done so well. That's why South Africa has done so well because they look at population. Because for them, it's all about how many subscriptions do we get. In terms of subscription, that's money. They're looking at the bottom line. So that's where the interest now has come from, to where people realize actually these people can do what we do.
Yes.
Yeah, and
We
they've
do.
got ideas too. So
Yeah, it is actually interesting. I've never really thought too much about it, but it is true. I mean, there's definitely been a peaked interest in African stories as of late, and it's very, from an actress perspective, it's very exciting. I mean, you've got South African stories made by South African
Africans.
crew and cast on Netflix, for
Yeah.
example, and they're popular not just in South Africa, they're
all
actually
over the
popular
world.
overseas. So I just think, to be honest, I think they've reached a point where they should stop telling African stories from a Hollywood perspective.
Thank you. Oh
And
my
letting the
goodness.
Africans tell the
Their own
African
story.
stories.
Yes.
Exactly.
And I think that's where they made that change now.
Yeah.
And it's very exciting
Yeah.
from our perspective as people in the industry.
Okay, Girley, you write a lot of films, I think.
I
Or TV
like-
series.
I-
Like right now, you told us that you're writing 2
I'm
TV
not
series.
I'm writing one TV series that I'm co-writing, and then I co-wrote Bachel and the Giants.
Yes.
And then a couple of years ago, obviously, I was part of the scriptwriters team for a Namibian series. I was called The Ties That Bind. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have an African audience or world audience in mind when you're writing?
Obviously, for me, it's because I'm an African, and I believe as filmmakers or storytellers, the things around us influence the stories we tell. So I usually I'm the type of person that would like to export what we have here to the rest of the world.
Exactly.
So even though the story is African, does it have a global appeal?
Yeah.
That's basically because you need to look at it from that strategy, you know? So I create stuff for our audience. What are things that are relatable to our people? And am I being culturally sensitive? Am I being culturally truthful pertaining to how I depict a particular character?
Yeah.
Because that's very important for me.
Okay.
You know? Yeah.
Is it easier to get a production noticed now by an international audience, as now we have the likes of Netflix and Showmax pushing African productions?
Repeat the question.
Is it easier to get a production noticed
Yeah.
now by an international audience, as now we have the likes of Netflix and Showmax pushing African productions?
Well, here's the thing. At least from a Namibian film industry perspective, the one issue that we always have is getting access to these streaming platforms. Because a lot of the times, a lot of the pitches that go on, like I said earlier, they look at population, audience reach. So usually South Africa has a lot more access,
Yeah.
to those streaming platforms. And even if you go to film festivals, it's not like they put up a stall advertising themselves. They find you if they're interested in your content, not the other way around.
Okay.
And then to even try and find them is really, really hard. But I think it has shed, at least if I'm talking about at least from the perspective of Bachel and the Giants being the first Namibian film on Netflix. So I'm hoping that has opened doors for us as an industry where they've noticed that we can tell stories. So yeah, I think from that perspective, because also if you're looking at Showmax, a lot of the content that they're creating, it's obviously a lot like South Africa, and then obviously the Real Housewives and stuff. So it's their focus. I think that particular Showmax is obviously a platform created for Africans in terms of that. And Netflix just gives you a bigger reach in terms of audience reach because of their subscription. But yeah, it has. It has.
So you do believe that this will give Namibian productions?
I think so.
I think it's just,
I think it's just a question of like, we shouldn't give up. If you really want something, go out there and find it. Nobody's gonna give it to you on a silver platter. So that's why it's imperative to attend film festivals, because that's where you network and meet people. Because I might meet you and you might know the buyer for Netflix that is buying series, etc., etc. So that's the purpose of film festivals. You are marketing the product that you've created, and also then networking, and then also looking at possible collaborations, because then you can look at co-producing. Because I mean, if you're looking at financing also from the perspective of Namibia, the only funding body that we have is the NFC. And they get a certain budget from government every year. So imagine how many things can they actually fund. So usually it is good to look at, can I co-produce with, let's say, a South African, because they get funding from NFVFF and DTI, and the list goes on. So that's how you usually, so those opportunities,
Amazing. Sunet, how is theatre doing in Namibia? Can you tell us?
Theatre in Namibia. Oh, you're asking the wrong person.
A lot.
We were just earlier talking about how I love film, and
not theatre.
Theatre scares me a little bit. I actually always think that the theatre industry in Namibia has been, in my opinion, I don't know, Girley can give her thoughts, but it's actually been more developed than our film industry. I think even moving here, they've created a lot of opportunities for upcoming theatre actors, producers, directors, whatever, to get into the thing. They've had quite a few initiatives to try and get that off the ground. So theatre for me, obviously with the COVID pandemic, that has given a quite bad beating to a lot of industries, and theatre specifically, because without a crowd you can't have theatre. So obviously now I think it still has a way to recover after the COVID pandemic, but for me the theatre industry has already been on the right path in Namibia for some time now. The film industry has been more difficult to get in. I mean, my first project that I did in Namibia was a theatre production. So that I got quite early on after moving back to Namibia. Film was a lot more difficult to get in because there's not that many opportunities, but it's getting there.
Yeah, we're getting there.
Okay. Girley, do you feel like you have to work harder because you're a woman of color? Like in a role, do you feel like you have to give 110% even though everyone's giving 100%?
I think because we're not known as a people, as a country. There's always that challenge of what makes you think you're good enough to have a seat at this table? Do you know what I mean? So, but that's also stuff that I try and block out, because obviously, as you know, it will affect you as an actor if you're trying to bring politics into the craft. But it has, as a woman, yes, because I mean, if we look at Nam, it was, there were people like Oshosheni Hivelwa, them, that obviously opened, and Marinda Steinem, that opened the doors for filmmakers, female filmmakers in Namibia. But at that time, it was very male-dominated, you know, in terms of the people behind the scenes, not in front of the camera per se. So yeah, you do have to give 150%. But then it also depends on, you have to ask yourself the question, why do I feel I need to do more than what I am? Because then that also becomes a question of, is it a lack of personal insecurities? Is it a question of imposter syndrome that we suffer from? Am I good enough to do this? But yeah, it's harder. It's harder because it's obviously like you're a woman. And also if they look at your resume in terms of stuff that you've done, it's like, are you actually the person that is the right candidate to do this? But then also if people approach you and they say, Chelsi, I want you to write this thing, or I want you to produce it, or I want you to act in it. I always believe in the universe doesn't bring me anything that I can't handle. So the reason why it's coming to me is because I can do it. So I accept it, I open myself up to it, and I always see it as a learning opportunity, because I always say, the challenges that you go through now in a certain phase of your life gives you the tools that you need to deal with where you want to go.
Yeah.
As a person, as an individual, the vision that you have for your life.
Exactly.
So yeah, it is tough, and you have to prove yourself. You have to be professional. You have to focus on why you're there. Like for me also, it's like, don't get involved in the gossiping and the bickering on set, like there's always politics, trust me.
Yeah.
So it's just like realizing, why am I here, and focusing on that and doing the job. And also for me, I feel because it's not a competition, I'm not competing with that person. So I basically just go and do me.
Yeah.
Yeah. I show up and get dressed and do what you need to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sunet, did you think it came easier as a white woman in this industry?
If I have to be completely honest, it's in some sense difficult because Namibia is telling Namibian stories. And obviously, how can I put this?
Let's get into it. I think.
As an Afrikaans woman, you know, where do we fit into African stories? That's kind of the problem. So I actually, a lot of the times, especially before I really got to know a lot of people in the industry, the only way I could really get work was to look for auditions, and I actually went out to meet people. And then when you get auditions, you're like always looking, okay, where's the white girl? Like, where can I go to audition? And I mean, it's just, it makes sense for, it would be wrong for Namibians to tell stories with like an all white cast. It doesn't make sense. So there were very few roles that I could actually audition for. So in that sense, but to be honest, at the same time, there's also not a lot of white female actresses in Namibia. I don't know why, but they tend to go to South Africa or overseas, try and work there. So in that sense, it was easier because I didn't have that much competition. So it was kind of difficult in some sense, looking for a story where you would actually fit in, where you can tell your story, and then also not having that much competition at the very least once you have that opportunity.
Do you think it's difficult for women to be part of the arts in Namibia?
I mean, Girley can also give her opinion on this, but I don't actually think getting work, I think, if I'm going to go slightly off topic here, but this is something that I've noticed as a woman in the film industry. Getting the work is not a problem. Exactly. But there are challenges that come with being a woman in the industry. We as women are more vulnerable to things because there are so many males in the industry. So I've had opportunities, for example, where I was asked to go audition at a guy's house. And then I'm like, I don't feel comfortable doing it. So I, as a woman, just set boundaries for myself and said, these are my values. This is what I stand for. This is what I'm willing to do. This is what I'm not willing to do to get a role. And I think we as women have to be careful to not be taken advantage of, because there are a lot of predators out there that see your dream as a way to hook you in. So, and it's not just for women in the film industry. I think it's for women in general.
Yes.
But especially because, you know, women who want to get into the entertainment industry or modeling, you're so passionate about it, and they sometimes take advantage of that. So I've had to like draw my line. So if I see, for example, a character, in my opinion, is overly sexualized, and that is like her personality trait throughout, I just say no at that point in time. And that makes the opportunities a bit more difficult, because I have toned down a lot of my opportunities because I don't agree with the way the character is portrayed as a woman, for example. So I would say in that sense, it's difficult, but I don't think there's a lack of opportunities for women. I just think we as women need to be more like, stand up for yourself. Don't let other people take advantage of you.
Know your worth. Know that your talent is enough, and that's it, you know. Sunet and Girley, you are both public figures, and the more famous you become, your private life becomes less private. Do you ever have an issue with that?
No.
Am I famous?
I don't even think we're famous. We're not blue ticked. So no, I don't, because I think also, I know, Sunet, you keep your private life very private, you know, like pertaining to your husband. I do the same thing. Like for me, social media, I show what I want them to see. You know, the rest, like, you know, because my relationship, that's sacred for me. That's the one thing that I don't have to share with people. So I don't, but I don't think I have I don't think there's anything bad written about us. Like those gossip columns.
Nah.
We're not that famous, Chomi.
We're not on your level. Interesting on the show. I don't know what to tell.
We're not on your levels. They don't have anything to write about, basically.
Well, they have a lot to write about. They can. Don't we have like film critics in Namibia?
Well, that's film critics. That's based off your.
But
that's,
don't they make you
your
famous?
performance, not your personal life.
Ah,
Yeah.
But I have to agree with Girley. I think it's dependent on how much you're willing to put out there. So I'm a very private person, and I've even gotten, I guess you could say, worse over the past few years, where I've gotten more private, and I've even taken a step back from social media in the last few years, because I wanted to, like, I think I saw a post that really touched me in this week that kind of describe how I feel at this point in time, where they say how your life feels is more important than what it looks like.
Hallelujah, preach.
And that's why I'm at this point where I'm like, I keep things private, because I'm focused on living my life and not necessarily putting it out there for the world.
But I feel like that's so easy to say, because like for me in my case, when I won Miss Namibia, it's like I didn't have a say. It's like I immediately
you became the people's person.
Yes, the people's person. But I still feel like as a people's person, I am allowed to have my own private life.
Yes, you are.
But then yet again, that was taken away from me. So it's like I sort of didn't have a choice. I just had to sort of swallow that really hot potato and be like, you know what I can do in the spaces that I can, I'll try that. But still, that in itself, I can't be like, okay, so if I'm in a relationship, I can't tell my friends, because I don't know if they're gonna tell the tablets that I have, you know, because it's like they're not gonna go as Chelsi Shikongo, they're gonna go as the title. So I feel like the title has
friends. What kind of friends do you have?
But still, I just feel like
you know what I mean.
No, but I understand.
Yeah.
So I feel that to a certain extent, it's like I really can't control it.
Yeah.
Because it's like you said, I'm for the people, but still, and that's the type of stereotype that I want to break now. That, you know, it doesn't matter if you're a public figure or not. People are allowed to have their own private lives. People are allowed to have their own emotions.
And you're not perfect either.
Yes. So just trying to break that stereotype. Even yesterday I had a radio interview and the guy was like, oh, Miss Namibia, you're working. And I'm like, yeah, I have a day job.
Exactly.
And he was like, but I thought you just like point people and then they bring you stuff. And I'm like,
that would be nice, but
pays your bills. You got bills to pay.
So I also told him, like, I want to break that stereotype of like, if you're a public figure, you're not allowed to be somebody that works. Because I even told him, I still pay my taxes. So that needs to mean something,
you're still
right?
Human.
Yes.
Exactly.
So, yeah, to a certain degree, I agree. Girley, you went through a very public divorce. Was that difficult being in the public
divorce? Wow, it wasn't public divorce.
There's like gossip about you, but clearly you got some lowdown.
No, it wasn't a public divorce.
Wasn't it public?
Where did you hear that?
I don't know.
It's not public. Yeah, I got
it's public enough that she knows
that
about
she
it.
knows about it. No, it wasn't a public divorce per se. Like I said, like I don't think, like, I'm not that famous, guys. Like, there isn't material to write about me. My divorce wasn't public. It was private. It was between my ex-husband and I. It was amicable. In fact, we had one lawyer.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
That should say everything. Yeah. And I'll leave it at that. Yeah.
Sunet, is your acting career on hold as you're soon to become a mummy?
Not actually necessarily. It has slowed down quite a bit, obviously for reasons, but also not going to say too much because it's still very much in early talks, but I'm possibly going to work on a project still this year. So, I mean, it's slowed down. Obviously, you have to look at my priorities, like I mentioned earlier, has changed. I'm focused now more on my family or whatever. But it's definitely not that I'm letting go of my acting or putting it on hold per se. If the opportunity comes, I'll take it. I guess I'm more pickier of what I do now, just based on, you know, I can't just leave the baby at home and be like, cheers,
bye.
Yeah,
Make
bye.
your own milk.
So obviously I'll have to keep that in mind. So it's going to be a bit more of a challenge moving forward, but it's definitely not on hold now.
Yeah.
Or are you going to be like one of those moms that take the kids on set and then you just like,
You're
we're going to
allowed
figure
to.
it out?
Yeah, it's just like,
together.
can we cut the scene? I just quickly have to feed my child.
Yes,
And just breastfeed there on set.
Pumping.
Like,
I
why
would
not?
love to see
They
that.
allow it.
Really?
Yeah.
It's
I
just
think
all
they
about
should, because at the
they've
end of the
done
day,
that.
like, my child needs to eat.
Exactly.
No, I'm like, at the end of the day, you need me in the scene.
I think they even
Exactly.
did that for Grey's, Grey's Anatomy, where a lot of the women were allowed to bring their babies, you know? So they obviously in the trailer or whatever with the nanny. So in between the breaks, you can go check on the baby or whatever. So it's just, it depends also, you know, the director and
Yeah.
the people that you're working with.
Okay, so this next question is for the both of you. Most Namibians in the entertainment industry have part-time jobs. Do you think we will ever see that change as it is in other parts of the world? Do you ever see Namibian creatives becoming full-time and
Yes.
making a living off it?
Yes, I think so.
Sunet looks very skeptical.
I look a little bit more.
I think so.
She's confident.
I think so.
I don't think it's impossible. I do think there's quite some time to go to get there. Just looking at, for example, South Africa, I mean, their industry is much more developed than ours. But even there, the amount of actors that are full-time actors and that don't do anything else, it's so small. I mean, when I studied acting there, my coaches were actors. It wasn't like if you can't do teach type of vibe. They were actors at the day, and that's why our classes were at night, because then they could actually manage around their shooting schedules.
Wow.
So they are full-time working actors, but unfortunately we still have quite some time to go in terms of budgets, so that we are paid enough to be able, because it's not that you don't get work. You can have a movie every single month, but you don't get paid that much to be able to
Sustain
a lifestyle. Yeah. So
Okay.
I think it's possible.
It's getting there.
So you
I think
wouldn't
it's getting there,
encourage Namibian...
No, don't get us wrong.
No,
we're not saying that. They should, because
The more we get people involved, the faster
bigger the
it'll get
industry
there. So
will grow.
please get involved.
Yeah.
and
Okay.
and I always encourage everyone, if you want to do acting, do it.
Do it.
Be realistic about it and understand that you might not be able to have the finances to sustain yourself, and you might have to do other things as well. But we live in such a cool world at the moment with technology that you can make a living doing
Online.
work at home. You
Yeah.
can do freelance work at home, and you can manage doing your acting. So there are definitely ways to do it, even if you can't make a full-time living off of acting right now.
So what skills do you need? Like what top two skills can you share that you need to be a successful actor? Like what
Top
are the skills?
skills.
Top skills. Like what is that one thing that you're like,
you must be able to take directions.
okay.
And I think you need to understand people.
Yeah.
Empathy. A lot of acting is reacting. And to be able to react to situations that you, for example, have never been in, you need to understand people, how they tick, why they do what they do. So there's a lot of psychology actually involved in acting. And I think being able to observe people, understand people, figure people out, that's a very, very useful skill to have.
Okay. So yet again, question for you both. We had Zita and Shana on a previous podcast, and I asked them to write a question for you both, and their questions were
Who's
the first
Zita
one.
and Shana, sorry?
They were they were our previous guests.
Okay.
Yes. And Zita is a comedian, and Shana is a songwriter, singer.
Okay.
Yes. So we asked them to write two questions, or they each wrote a question that you both have to answer.
Okay.
The first question is, what made you decide to go into the profession that you're doing?
Because it's the one place where I feel alive. And I think also for me it was, because as a child I was a loner. I'm actually more of an introvert than an extrovert, which is weird to be an actor.
Same.
So it was a means for me to escape my reality.
For me, it's just always, I've had fun playing with my imagination. Like, I remember my first report card in like when I was still like grade R or something. They
Grade
said,
R?
Yeah,
they used to be grade R, baby.
Oh, okay.
Before the 90s.
I was born
after the 90s, baby. On free, baby.
Yes.
but they still said she likes playing like imaginative
Make-believe.
games by herself.
Yeah.
And that's always been my
That's
thing.
me.
I'm always in my imagination and I love stories and I love storytelling. So I was just like, makes sense.
Makes sense. The second question is, what as a creative would you like all Namibians to do as a creative to bring more awareness to artistry in Namibia? What can we do as a collective together?
I think, we should
us.
rally together as an industry to encourage government to fund the industry a bit more. You know, because obviously that's the one thing when there's budget reviews that are being done, the one thing that gets cut is that, you know, it's the arts.
Wow.
Because also if you look at, I'm talking about now obviously from film perspective, the NFC only gets 3 million.
3 million
A year.
for the year.
What can they do with that? If you
Wow.
fund one feature film, let's say that's 1.3, what are you left with? Then you have to do a couple of short films. So, yeah, so they have a limited budget. So I think as an industry, we should rally together to obviously also show the government that actually the value that the industry adds. Because if you look at film creates, it's like a domino effect, ripple effect. Because we rent vehicles.
Yeah.
Do you get what I mean? So that's transport. There's fuel that we need to pay for. We also touch on the retail industry where we have to buy costumes and wardrobe in shops.
Fabric.
There's locations, so that's tourism. So if you look at what we actually add that filters down to the GDP, and actually that's just quantified, then they would actually see the value that we actually add. And also if you look at during COVID, what were everybody doing when they were locked up? Watching TV.
Yes.
They were being entertained. So that shows the power of what we do.
So you're saying we should rally together.
Yeah, as a collective, you know, because I think also at the moment it's a very divided industry.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
You've got film, you've got theater, you've got visual art, you've got dance, but there's no one unison in terms of what do we want as an art industry as a collective.
That's true. Yeah. Sunet?
I definitely agree with what Girley said. There's definitely a need for us to start having other people take us seriously, to be honest. And I think us doing what we do and continue to do what we do might help other people take us more seriously.
Exactly.
So I think if we continue to create, when she mentioned earlier, if there's no door open for you, you make your own door. And I think we just need to start showing people that there's value in entertainment, there's value in creative content. And not just even in film and theater, I think in general of online content creation, YouTube, social media, there's so many opportunities. And thankfully, thanks to social media and technology, we don't necessarily need someone to give us an opportunity. We can create our opportunities. So I think we need to start creating more to show people we mean business. And then hopefully they'll get with the program.
Because I also think, like, in terms of, sorry, just to add something on, I always see it as within limitations, there are opportunities.
Yeah.
And this is something that I learned a while ago when I was working with an art director. You usually get paired like art director, copywriter. And I always used to freak out about, the brief has so many no's, mandatories, you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do this. It's like, Girley, at least they've told us what we can't do.
Yes.
So now the world is our oyster. There's so many things you can do. They didn't say you can't use red.
Yeah.
So if you want to use red, you can now go crazy. So there's always opportunities in limitations.
Yeah, I do believe that as well, because that's how I started Namibian Go Humor. It was just like this idea that I had, and I decided to put it out, and people supported me because of that. And now I could say that I actually do comedy, like storytelling comedy. So it really
want to
just
see
takes...
Jennifer more. When is she coming back?
I love that you remember, because a lot of people confuse it with Jessica. And then I'm always just like, who is Jessica?
Jennifer.
Sunet, do you know my comedy skits?
Jennifer and Jonas.
So curious now. Like I'm literally sitting here. I'm just like, okay, where can I find this?
YouTube,
figuring
TikTok.
out where I can go to go find this, because I'm very intrigued now.
In one scene. So she plays a character called
definitely gonna
Jennifer.
go check this out
Then
now.
she plays Jennifer's boyfriend, who's Jonas. Then she plays Jennifer's friends.
I'm
Then she
invested in
plays
this
the
now. I
host
need to
people.
know. Who's Jennifer?
Jennifer is just an alter ego of 19-year-old me that was going through high school, and gossip was like the it thing for us. Like it was like tooth and nail. If you gossip about me, we go to your house,
Take off the
we hash it
earrings.
out. Yeah. I do have one last question to ask you both. If you could also write a question for our next guest to include in the show, we would absolutely love that. It's a little notebook with the big 5.
So what do we write? Like when you
Just
say
a question that you would want to ask, or that you would want the next guest to answer. So, like you said, the world is your oyster. We don't know. Well,
I've
we
got a
know, but we
question.
can't.
Yeah, you write, baby.
Yeah.
I need to think about my question.
You need to think about your
Where
question.
can I write
No,
it
no,
anywhere?
Anywhere.
think
The
long and
paper
hard.
is yours.
Thank you both for coming in, Girley and Sunet. I truly appreciated everything that you shared with me today. Absolutely taking notes like all the time. So thank you so much for coming and having this conversation with me about your experiences in your industry. Until next time, when we discover more about women in entertainment, thank you for joining me.